Livestream's up, by the way. So if you're on YouTube, Livestream my screen right now. Fucking bad. Make sure Unreal is launching in the background. We get started soon. Did we win this thing? I don't know yet. I think the votes say we did, but I haven't heard anything. We ain't gonna win. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you heard about it, huh? Okay, so we're gonna get started. This is our refresher course in Unreal Engine, as if you never did it before. Okay, so if you missed last time, or you were absent, or you didn't pay attention because you thought it'd be another BS teacher coming in and teach, non-practical stuff, then I want you to pay attention this time. This is your chance, your last chance, to get caught up on how to make a video game, right? These things stack, right? It's kind of like math. You don't pay attention in one grade in math like the rest of your life. It's like always builds on itself. It's like that with this. So I really want you to pay close attention. Bring up the live stream. You don't have it up already, because I don't know if I'll be doing many more of these refresher courses with us, right? This is going to be like we've never done it before. It's going to be awesome, and we're all going to know how to use Unreal by the end of today. Okay. For most of this lesson, I'll be sitting down. That way I can be mic'd. So you should all be looking at what is essentially the new project window. Okay. This is where you have several templates to choose from. You like to start with a template in game development because that way you don't have to do everything from scratch. Rarely do we ever do things from scratch. We take something that's built and then we modify it from there. And a template I want you to use today is something called the third person template. So click on third person, and once you have third person pulled up, selected, make sure that the thing that says with starter content is checked, or it says with starter content. You don't want it saying no starter content. Starter content is going to give us things like basic 3D models and textures and all that sort of thing to sort of decorate our world with. Name the project, whatever you want to name it. My first project works. Okay. And then hit create project. You can't have any spaces in the name of your project, so if you have any spaces, it won't let you create it. So make sure it's one word, and that it's third person, and then hit create project. Now, what is Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine is a game development editor, right, for making video games in. Fortnite was made in Unreal Engine. The most famous game, recent famous game to be made in Unreal is the new Kingdom Hearts that came out. Yeah, the new Kingdom Hearts game that just came out was made absolutely 100% in Unreal Engine. The same Unreal Engine that you're using, the viewport, and details panel, and all that. You guys sound like you're getting really excited by the lesson over there. Yeah, that's good. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Let's keep the enthusiasm down a little bit, though. I know this stuff's exciting. All right. So we have right here, it's pulled up for me. Yours might still be loading. This center box where all the level design happens, you're going to hear me call this the viewport. Okay, it's referred to as the viewport. The viewport's where the world is designed in. okay? And I'll explain what all these things do in turn, all these different panels, and this is what makes up what I would say is the front of Unreal Engine, okay? Where most of your work will be done. So, is there anybody whose project's still loading? Raise your hand. Anyone whose project's still loading? Otherwise, I'll move on, but I'll wait if it's still being created. Give it one second. Okay, I'll give it a second. All right, all right. So again, if you don't have the live stream pulled up, pull it up. It'll help you. That way you can take a look on your own screen what I'm looking at. I'll be pretty verbally descriptive. So I'll say, you know, in the upper left, look at this, that sort of thing. So just listen well, and you'll be able to follow along. While those last few projects load up, I'll just explain a little bit more. Unreal Engine, right? Game development environment. You make Kingdom Hearts in it. You make, you know, Fortnite in it. Anything. It has been around since the 1990s. Is one of the first game engines ever. Other games made in Unreal, BioShock, the Arkham Batman series, Gears of War, bunch of stuff. Now, Unreal Engine, unlike Adobe programs, for example, is actually totally and 100% free to download and install the full version completely, including at home. So unlike, you might think, oh, I can only use Unreal when I come to class. No, you can actually use it at home. It's free to download. The way they make their money is if you make a game and sell a game and that you made an Unreal Engine, then you have to pay 5% royalty on the profit that that game makes after it's made $3,000, okay? Other than that, that's free. There's no, you don't pay any money to use it. There's no trial version. You're using the same version that Kingdom Hearts was made in, right? Very cool. I'm sorry? Go to Force Quit by, okay, where is it? Click on the, I'll come back. Okay, so we're looking at Unreal Engine. This center part here, this is the viewport. I want you to click your mouse once into the viewport where the level design happens. And once you've done that, and then we know it's selected, I want you to hold down your right mouse button. Hold down the right mouse button on your mouse and move your mouse around. And this is how you look around Unreal. This is how you look around. Now, while still holding the right mouse button down, if you take your left hand and you put it on the keyboard where the W, A, S, and D keys are. W, pressing W will make you go forward. A will go left. D will go right. S will go backwards. Okay. Forward, left, right, backwards. W, A, S, D. If you're not holding down right mouse button, it won't work at all, right? So you got to hold down right mouse button. That way you can look around. And just with those controls, your left hand on WASD, right hand on the mouse, you can basically move around the world in any way you want. You know, if I want to go back, go down, I would look up and press S to go backwards and orient my view, that sort of thing. You could also press Q and E to go up and down. So Q will go down, E will go up. All right. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to click on something in our level. So click on the stairs, for example. And once you've clicked on the stairs, you get these arrows that come up. And the arrows can be used to move the object. So if you hover over one of the arrows, it'll highlight, it'll turn yellow. And then you can left click and drag that object in the direction. So with these stairs, blue arrow goes up and down. If I hover over it, I can left click and then just drag my mouse, which causes the stairs to go up and down, just like that. Next, what if I wanted to rotate it? What we're going to do is we're going to look in it's the top right of this viewport is all these buttons. We're going to go from left to right and explain what each of these do. Right now, the button that is on the very left, you currently have it selected. It's that move tool with the arrows. But if you click the second button, which I want you to do, click the second button, the arrows now turn into these rotation tools where you can drag them, and then it's going to rotate the object. Wow. Now it's rotating, not moving, but rotating. And then I want you to click that third button in the upper right toolbar. The third one, going from left to right, is the scale button, the scale tool. Scale is really cool because you can drag this out. I can make wider stairs, for example, or really tall stairs. And let's say I want to keep something's shape exactly the way it is, but I just want to make it larger. Well, what I would do is I would put my mouse in the center of the scale tool where all three highlight yellow, and then when I drag up and down, it scales uniformly. It just gets up in size. It doesn't change the shape of it in any way. Okay. All right, continuing over from left to right on that toolbar, this fourth button thing I almost never use. It just has to do with coordinate systems. The next one, you click on it, has this option to do surface snapping. This is good. This is useful when you're toward the very end of designing a level, when you're just like in the decorating phase. Because what it'll do is objects will sense what's underneath them, and basically when you're dragging them through the world, they'll stick to the surfaces below them. So if you're decorating a table and you're putting, silverware and stuff on the table, everything will stick to that table. There'll be no space in between. It won't be floating. That's a surface snapping for. I leave it off most of the time. Okay. Next up is this grid system. The grid system is actually pretty useful and important to keep an eye on. So at default, instead of default of 10, if I change it to from 10 to 500, for example, and I try moving something like this cube, for example, it's going to jump every time I move it. It's jumping 500 units because I set the grid to 500. If I set it down to only 100, it'll jump just a little bit every 100 units. The reason we like to use grids is so that we can snap objects together. So most games, objects that seem like they'd be a single kind of entity, a single 3D model, usually are not. For example, most buildings you go into in a game are not. They're designed through what's called modular design, which is like to say that they are made up of Lego pieces. And the reason they do that is it's a way of designing all these different interiors where a player can go into. And you only have to design the art once, but you could have thousands of different buildings out of it. An example of that would be like, let's say this cube here is a door, and it's exactly, let's say, 100 units tall and 50 units wide. And then say all my doors in my whole game are exactly 100 units tall and exactly 50 units wide. That means I can have some abandoned, building and swap out the concrete door with the wooden door asset, because I want to use a wooden door for some reason. And it's going to fit perfectly because everything is designed on a grid-based system. The door, no matter what door it is, it's 50 units wide and 100 units tall. And all the walls are designed with that in mind, and that way they can all snap together. So the grid system is really important. I would leave it on like 10 or 50 for now. Now there's also snapping for the rotation angles. Cool. And then there are scale snapping, which I almost never use. And then on the very far right are the camera options, where you have the camera speed. So you have a speed of 4 right now. If I turn that up, when I fly around my world, it's much faster, which is good for large worlds, but not good if you're like trying to decorate something, in which case you might want to take it down to 4. All right, so that's the viewport. That's where all level design happens. Moving on the left side is our modes panel. Modes panel is useful for just grabbing anything and putting it in our world. Things like lights. So let's bring out a light. I want you to bring out a point light from the modes panel. That's the panel on the left of Unreal Editor. Bring out a point light. And if you want, bring out a couple point lights. Now with a point light selected, it's a light, right? But there's things you can change about that light. In fact, there's things you can change about everything in Unreal, right? And where you go to change those things is always going to be the details panel. The details panel. The details panel holds the details of an object, or otherwise known as like the characteristics, the attributes, the details, right? So with our point light selected, look in the details panel on the right, lower right details panel, and look at the different settings you have for the light. You have the intensity, right? What happens when you turn the intensity up or down? It gets brighter. Now, I want you to turn the intensity up, and without me telling you, can you change the light color? Can you change the color of the light? So do that now. Cool, so we can change light colors. Now, our level's looking a little gray, and really it's pretty simplistic. What if we want to give these objects textures, which are actually in modern day games known as shaders, right, which are textures plus a bunch of math. And in Unreal, we call them materials. So we want to add materials, which is going to form the skin of the object, what it actually looks like. To do that, we have materials in our content browser. That's the very bottom panel. And at the very bottom. What I want you to do is click the little button. It's in the left. It's right underneath Add New, and it's right next to Filters, just on the left there. Click that little icon, and then we can see all our folders. I want you to go to the Starter Content folder, and then double-click on the Materials folder, and that'll show us our materials. Materials are a bunch of spheres with different looks on them, different textures, right? And what I'd like you to do is drag those materials onto objects in your world. That burnished steel on the floor, I like that one. Looks good. Some materials I really like is the one called M_tech hex, sort of the bottom. It's very sci-fi-ish. It just looks great. But you also have things like an ocean material that actually moves. It has waves going on with it. That's a really cool one. And now that you're decorating this world, why don't we have you walk around this world so you can get a look at what you're designing. So we can play. Hit the play button. This is in the middle top. You'll see it says play. Click that. And now you can run around your world as your character. All right. Now, once we've done that, we've got basically one panel left, which is in the upper right, the World Outliner. A World Outliner is just a list of every single item in our entire level, every single thing. It's useful to have a list like this because you can delete things real fast. Just look up the name or just scroll through the list and find what you want to delete, delete it. You could also find things in your world real fast. So if you've got a big world, and for example, you're looking for your third-person character, you don't know where he is, you can just look for the third-person character in this list, in the World Outliner. Once you see the name third-person character, double-click on him, and it'll take you right to him. So anything you double-click on in the World Outliner, it'll take you to that thing, including the sky. So one thing I like to do is to show you kind of how to delete stuff. So what if we want this scene to be nighttime? The easiest way to do that is to delete everything that's making the sky bright. So we'll delete all the lights. We'll delete the sky. We'll delete the sun. So let's start with the sun. The sun in this case is called light source or directional light. So you type in light in the World Outliner in the search bar. I want you to delete the thing called light source. Oh, actually, we want to delete sky first. So delete sky. Actually, type in sky, delete the sky sphere blueprint. And also delete skylight while you're at it. Then you can go look up light source, delete that too. Final thing after that is delete the thing called fog, atmospheric fog. Once you've deleted that, you'll have a totally dark nighttime scene. And when you play it, it's just those point lights that you edited to light your way. And this is the part where we might have the idea of giving our player a flashlight, something he can light the world with, right? So to do that, we want to actually edit the object that the character is, which is called a blueprint. A blueprint is a coded object, okay, in Unreal. And I want to find our third-person character, select him. Once your third-person character is selected, in his details panel on the right, hit Edit Blueprint, Open Blueprint Editor. So you click your third-person character, details, Edit Blueprint, Open Blueprint Editor. And then drag this up to the top so that you have a big, wide view of the whole thing. Now, in the Blueprint Editor, this is what you'll start out on what's called the Blueprint Graph. And the Blueprint Graph is where all the coding happens. This is visual scripting, visual scripted code. And what we're going to do is you can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out of it, okay? This is pre-made code already on our character. It came with the template. And you can hold down the right mouse button and drag, and that will let you move around your graph. But before we do any graph editing or any sort of coding, let's take a look at the other 3 tabs that are in this blueprint. Right next to the event graph tab, up here towards the top, is the construction script, which has nothing on it currently. This is also an area where code will happen. The only difference is code that goes on here happens before the game is played. It's known as design time, whereas stuff that happens in the event graph happens at what's called runtime or play time while the game, after the game has been launched, while it's going. But I want you to go to the viewport tab. Okay, that's that tab on the left. The viewport tab is, hey, what is the physical manifestation of our blueprint? What does it look like? In this case, this is our player character. This is what he looks like. And we can change things in here. For example, what if we wanted this game to be a first-person game instead of a third-person game? To change it, it's not that hard. We have a camera over here. Click on the camera. And when you click on the camera, you get these arrows. Drag the arrow forward so you get the camera through the head, through the body, and then drag it up the camera right through the guy's head. If you get it just right, and take some tweaking sometimes, hit play. And voila, you have a first-person game, just like that. Yeah, well, I'm flipped with Mr. Rendon. He's in 641 right now.
Can I get Daniel Batista for your book?
Yes, Daniel Batista. You here? Daniel? Your book.
I need an interview.
Okay, so you have a first-person game just like that. Not so hard, right? All right, hit escape. I said we could add a flashlight before, so let's do that. In the Components tab on the left, right, we're back at our blueprint. The Components tab is where we add things to our blueprint. We can add a light. So I want you to click on, make sure follow camera is what's currently selected, by the way. This way, when we add the light, it'll follow where the camera's looking. And then hit the green Add Component button and choose Spotlight. I'm going to look up something called Spotlight, because Spotlight is a lot like a flashlight. It shines in one direction, just like a flashlight would. And you can either leave this at where his head is, or you can drag it to wherever you think it'd be good to have a flashlight coming out. And you can increase the intensity, right, from 5,000 to something higher. And you can change the color, because you know how to do that by now. And if you hit play, you should have a flashlight, like I do, which is great. As I get closer to this gold wall, it gets brighter. As I go back, it's dimmer. And it follows where I'm looking. So good, we have a flashlight. All right, let's take this a step above. What if we want to turn this flashlight on and off? That is to say, what if we want our player to do that? We'll do that. We'll have to code it a little bit. So we want to go to the event graph. Okay, so click on the event graph tab. And we can ignore all this code for now. We just want to find an empty area of graph to write our own code. So find an empty area, and you can right-click, and right-click brings up all the possible code and all the possible functions you could ever do in a video game ever. Okay, that's what happens when you right-click. You have access to everything. And one thing that would be good is we'll pick a keyboard key or something, and when the player clicks, or we could even do a mouse key, it doesn't matter, the flashlight turns on and off. Any suggestions as to what we should use as our input? Any suggestions? So let's do the L key for light, right? So just type in, so you right-click, type in L space key, and you just want to look for something under keyboard events, and it's just the letter L for when the L is pressed. Choose L, and then you now have this L event, okay? So when L is pressed, you can now have code that happens. The way code works in Unreal, it all goes from left to right, and it goes to these wires of logic. So we're going to drag off, left-click and drag off pressed, and you're going to get this wire. And once you let go of that wire, having left-clicked and dragged off a press, you get the menu again. And now we can continue to look up anything we want to do in Unreal. In which case, I want you to look up something called flip-flop. Yep, flip-flop, which is a really strange name, but it's a type of toggle, which is good for turning a light on and off. So you pull flip-flop, and basically you see it just gives us these two channels, an A channel and a B channel. And the way it works is it will flip between A and B depending on which one was done last time. So we'll start at A, and if then the player pressed A last time, the next time this L gets fired, it'll do B, and the next time L gets fired, it'll do A again, and so on and so forth for infinity, right? As many times as it needs to be pressed. So flip-flop's great. Next up, I said we want to turn that light on and off, right? Our light is a spotlight on the components. While you're in this graph, in the left where it says spotlight, you can actually click on that, drag spotlight out onto your graph. You can drag the spotlight from components onto the graph, and you get what's called a reference to it. And all that means is that now you have this thing called spotlight on your graph. If you drag off of that spotlight, you can do anything to any of the settings in this details panel. So the way we were changing color before, we can now change its color through the blueprint. And then we were changing intensity before, we can now change its intensity through the blueprint. Any of that stuff. In fact, intensity is not a bad one, because if we want to turn a light off, right, it's really bright at high intensities. How bright is it at 0 intensity? It's nothing, it's dark, right? So let's set any intensity, and that's how we'll turn the light on and off. So dragging off a spotlight, type in set space intensity, and then choose set intensity. Once you have that, it says the new intensity, the number goes in there, it's already 0, so I'll leave that alone. And I'll plug the A channel into the front of that node. Just like that, okay? And then we'll do it one more time for the B channel. So from dragging off spotlight, dragging off of there, typing in set intensity, connecting the B channel into it. For the new intensity, for this B channel, make sure it goes back to a really high number so it's bright again. So maybe I'll choose that one as like 20,000 or something. So all that code's saying is, hey, if L gets pressed, I want you to switch between two states. The first one being the spotlight's intensity is set to 0. The second one saying the spotlight's intensity is set to 20,000. And that way the light has the appearance of turning on and off. All right, that's all it takes. That's the code. If I hit play, let's test this. Okay, I've got this flashlight, I've got this spotlight. I'm going up to my gold wall over here, and I can see it. And if I press L, it turns off. Totally turns off. I press L again, turns back on, and so on and so forth. I've just added a gameplay feature the player can do. And if a game is all just a list of features the player can do, things that he can do or she can do, then that's pretty quick. We just added one. So think about the things that you can add in the game that you're making, and we'll continue lessons tomorrow. Thank you.